Our next guest, a very successful coach for the Duke Blue Devils and the Florida Gators and the South Carolina Gamecocks and in the USFL. He gave the NFL a try as well. He has a new book out. You can see him in Dr. Pepper commercials. He's an ambassador for his alma mater, the Florida Gators. Steve Spurrier, welcome back to the David Glenn Show. How are you?
David, good to be with you.
It's great to have you with us, Coach. Hey, I started covering you when you were at Duke in the late 1980s, and I never would have guessed that the visor would become part of your persona because I thought you wore just the traditional baseball caps back then. How in the heck did the visor become synonymous with Steve Spurrier?
Yeah, you're right, David. Actually, I'd wear usually not anything until 1989. We played Clemson on a rainy day, and I, of course, put a hat on because it was raining on and off that day. We had a huge upset, and I mean a huge upset. They were number 7 in the nation, 4-0, and we were 1-3, and we sort of changed our defense. We found a running back. We always had Clarkston Hines and a pretty good offense, and we upset them 21-17 when I was wearing a hat. So I guarantee you, I wore that hat the rest of the season, and we won every game. So that was why the hat. But when I got to Florida, sunshine, and I'd always worn a visor on the golf course. So why not wear a visor now? I'm a big believer that in life we need to do our job maybe a little different from everybody else. If you want different results, perhaps you yourself should be different. You've heard that one.
Yep.
So I started wearing a visor when I got to Florida in 1990.
It's funny. Everybody knows at least two things, among others, about Steve Spurrier. One is the visor. The other is the head ball coach, of course, which is the title of your new book, a New York Times bestseller. I was amazed to read that those aren't just things that fans talk about, head ball coach or the visor. When coaches have gotten jobs that befriended you, they called you and said, what? Hey, Coach, I'm a head ball coach now, too.
Oh, yeah, they'll say that. And I've had several coaches say, Coach, I wore that visor because I watched you wearing it back in the early 90s in Florida. And you guys were going up and down the field and beating a lot of people, so I figured I might as well start wearing one also. Yeah, that's a nice compliment when coaches say that.
Steve Spurrier joining us. Check out the book. It is available everywhere. Head Ball Coach, My Life in Football. Coach did it with an old friend of his, the writer Buddy Martin. It's an outstanding read, available everywhere. Head Ball Coach Steve Spurrier joining us here on the David Glenn Show. This will not surprise you, Coach, but as a young writer, I used to jockey with some of my colleagues at the Durham Herald-Sun. When we were assigned this press conference or that press conference, we all wanted to go to yours because you just seemed like unafraid and we weren't sure what kind of grenade you were going to toss our way on a given day. Tell us your philosophy, because whether it's you can't spell citrus without UT or FSU as Free Shoes University, you may be as famous for your one-liners as you are for your championships.
Yeah, David, I tell you what, those came in the summertime, though. When I was down here in Florida, I'd do around 21, 22 Gator Booster Club events, and they wanted to hear something halfway funny.
Yeah.
So something that happened during the course of the year, like Tennessee. I think Tennessee went to the Citrus Bowl about 3 years in a row. So it was, I don't make those up, but somebody tells them to me, so I go ahead and repeat them to the Gators. And the Gators think they're sort of funny, I guess. But during the season, I talked very low-key. I talked like most coaches, I think, during the season.
So are you saying you're like a late-night comedy host where a lot of your best material was written by others? I mean, I'll never forget the Auburn dormitory fire where you said, the worst part was most of the books hadn't even been colored in yet.
Yeah, that was just an old corny joke, and I don't know, for some reason I stuck Auburn's name on it. In other years, I'd stick Clemson's name on it occasionally, too. But those are just old corny jokes. You open up a speaking event with usually something halfway funny. So that's the only reason I did those things. But again, during the season, I'm a big believer you don't want to say anything that might rile up your opponent. When you say things in the summer and then all of a sudden the week of the game would come up, everybody seemed to forget the summertime talk.
Steve Spurrier joining us on the David Glenn Show. The new book is called Head Ball Coach, My Life in Football. He gets into a lot of things dating back to his childhood and answers virtually every question you'd probably have about his time in the great sport of football. Now when people see you, Coach, do you get asked, instead of the old school type stuff? Do you start to hear ice cold Dr. Pepper here? Is that starting to hit you a little bit?
Oh, I guess a little bit. Yeah, most people seem to like those ads. The Dr. Pepper man, he's pretty funny. Does a super job with them, and so forth. But just occasionally I'll get that.
We know that we're not supposed to use the R word for you, even though you stepped away at South Carolina.
Right.
You're an author now. You still work with your alma mater, Florida. You're doing Dr. Pepper commercials. I imagine you're still playing a lot of golf. What should we call it, and what else is going on in your world?
Oh, I hadn't played a lot of golf, David, but I am down here in Gainesville, Florida, consulting ambassador. Actually, we've got a 50-year class reunion of Florida Gators here this weekend.
Cool.
So I'm going to speak at a breakfast with those guys. My last year in college was actually 66. So we got a bunch of Gators coming back, and hopefully our team can go beat LSU. It's going to be tough. LSU is very good, as we all know. So that's a highlight of the weekend this Saturday.
Steve Spurrier joining us, the 1996 National Championship coach with the Gators. 6 SEC titles. I know, Coach, you say 7 SEC titles. Also that 1 ACC title with the Duke Blue Devils. He's been a 7-time SEC Coach of the Year and a 2-time ACC Coach of the Year. With that flashback all the way to 1989 in mind, that is the last time still that the Blue Devils can claim a football championship. For years after you left Durham, you'd still give the Blue Devils a vote. How do you describe why Duke always will have that special place in your heart?
David, first of all, I was hired at Duke University twice.
Yeah.
Once as an assistant coach, and then as a head coach back in the 80s, and coached in the USFL and so forth. And, coming back prior to that 89 season, actually the team set a goal. They set a goal of winning the ACC. And we were 1-3 before that Clemson game, and after we beat Clemson, we got on a good roll. And I don't know if you were at the press conference, but with 3 games left, I'll never forget it, and I talk about it often. We were at one of those press conferences, and one of the sports writer guys said, "Coach, do you realize if you guys win your last 3 games, you will be ACC football champions?" And we knew it, but we, didn't want to talk about it at that time. It would look sort of stupid, Duke talking about winning the ACC in football. So I said, yeah, we sort of know where we are. But the team set a goal that year of doing it, and that was the first year I had ever set goals, write them down, and talk about them with the team in '89. So obviously when I got to Florida in 1990, a school that had 0 SEC championships in 57 years, we set goals and had a loaded team. I had ball players, all positions, Shane Matthews, and of course, as you know, we won 6 SEC in the next 7 years. So, goal setting and how to achieve your goals—that's all in my book. This is a book about how a coach got somewhere with a lot of really good players, but just sort of raised their mental expectations and set some goals that we thought were realistic, and we believed we had a good chance to achieve them. And by golly, we got most of them. Didn't get them all. You don't always get all your goals, but if you get maybe 7 out of 9 or something like that, you've had a wonderful season.
Coach mentioned the new book. It is a New York Times bestseller. It's called Head Ball Coach, My Life in Football, written by Coach Spurrier with his buddy Martin. I actually was there in person in 1989. You're probably amused that people still talk about this game and this photo, Coach. But there you are on the field at Kenan Stadium. It's 41-0, and you take the famous photo in front of the UNC scoreboard showing the score. Now, you know how this goes. The theory is you just love sticking it to the Tar Heels as often as possible. But I was there that day, and I remember you talking more about winning an ACC title, right? I mean, I'm sure there was a little sticking it to the Tar Heels, but...
Oh, that's what it was, David. You may not remember, but teams did not really get under the scoreboard and take the picture after winning the championship. And what happened, we're playing at Maryland that year, 1989. We're up at Maryland, and we beat them pretty good. It was like 46-25, somewhere in that neighborhood. But the game was about a minute left in the game, and one of our assistant coaches' wife, Jerry Collins, was always down there taking pictures. She was our photographer. So So I said, Jerry, after this is over, I'm going to get the guys underneath the scoreboard, and we're going to take a picture because this is the first time Duke has won at Maryland since 1960. So 29 years, I think, was the last time we'd won there. I said, if it takes another 29 years, at least we're going to have a picture to prove we did up there one time. So the guys loved it. They were smiling. You know, we beat Maryland at Maryland. So I came in the locker room and I said, if we win out and beat North Carolina, we will take a picture underneath their scoreboard also. And actually, when the game was over, I came in. They sort of rode me off the field and came in. And one of the guys said, Coach, how about the picture on the scoreboard? I said, you're right, let's go. So we all took off out there and got the picture. And, man, I'm really glad we did because that OC championship at Duke, they only won in 54 years, is priceless. All the players on that team, it's just a memory of a lifetime.
After your time with the Gators ended in 2001, or after that season, I guess, I remember years, Coach, where it was like a game. When you were not in the NFL, everybody was guessing where you would end up next. Was there ever a time that you considered going to work for the arch rival Tar Heels, or was it always South Carolina as the best fit for you?
Well, David, it's sort of interesting. Coaching is pretty much when you're available and a job's open.
Yeah.
I had talked to sort of a big booster at North Carolina, actually, and he said, would you be interested in this job? And I said, well, of course I would. Of course I would. I do want to coach again. And I was 59 at the time, but I figured I had at least 5, 7, 8 good years. Ended up going 10 more. But anyway, what happened, North Carolina, their field goal kicker made I want to say a 55-yarder to beat Miami.
Yeah.
And North Carolina, I think, had a winning season, so they kept their coach. And so the South Carolina job was open, and their athletic director, Mike McGee, came up a couple times and offered me the job. And so that was a wonderful situation. I thoroughly am happy and glad that I had a chance to go to South Carolina. We had some wonderful seasons. We own just about all the records associated with winning down there, and certainly wish them the very best in the future.
Coach, when you think about your NFL experiment, it stands out. I don't know how far into this you get in the book, but you bring an ACC title to Duke in football. You mentioned the backdrop with the Gators before you got there. It was not nearly as good as maybe some people remember, and you guys had that national title and so many other success stories. 3 straight top 10 seasons at South Carolina, where people rarely won before you. And, of course, your USFL experience was only winning records. What was your takeaway for basically your only coaching experience that did not end up being truly great?
Well, first of all, let's just say maybe we didn't have the harmony. We all weren't on the same team. The owner and the general manager were the same guy, but I did a poor job. It didn't work out, and now I'm sort of glad it didn't work out because it gave me an opportunity to go to South Carolina.
Yeah.
But I don't have any excuses about it and so forth, and I didn't do a very good job and didn't work out, so it was time to move on and go from there.
The president-elect called you earlier this year, quote, a very good guy and a sweetheart. I know you both like golf, and you were both in the old USFL together. How far does that relationship go?
Yeah, I did play with Donald Trump one morning at Saddlebrook. They had the USFL championship game, I think, that night. And John Bassett, who was our owner of the Bandits, said, you want to play with Donald Trump tomorrow morning at Saddlebrook? I said, sure. So we went out there and played. I think that was 1984. And then I actually played with him one time out at Lake Tahoe also. And I remember we were on about the 13th tee box. And I said, Donald, at what age are you thinking about retiring? He looked at me sort of funny. He said, retiring? Why would a person ever want to retire if they love what you're doing in life? And I started thinking, he's right. Why would you want to retire if you're successful and love what you're doing? Now, the end of my South Carolina career, we were not successful, and they needed a new coach, and it was time to move on. But he's got a good point, and he and I think we're about a year age-wise within each other.
Steve Spurrier, as we let you go, Coach, and as we encourage folks to check out the book, Head Ball Coach, My Life in Football. It is available everywhere, already a New York Times bestseller. We've gotten to know Dabo Swinney of Clemson pretty well in recent years. He's a regular guest here on our show. When you were with the Gamecocks, and of course he's still with the Tigers, it seemed that somehow, unlike, say, American politics can just be so nasty all the time, you guys had like this hate-filled rivalry, but it seemed to be just like a pretty cool human being to human being, man to man. You'd take your shots at each other, but you had a mutual respect underneath it. Is that a fair portrayal, Coach? Can it still be that way, even in a hateful rivalry like South Carolina-Clemson?
Yeah, I think you said it correctly there. Now, of course, we were fortunate enough to beat them 5 years in a row, but maybe a little bit before he really got it going. Well, no, I better take that back because he had it going pretty well when he had Taj Boyd there, and I think we beat when Taj Boyd was quarterback all 4 years also. But yeah, Clemson only lost to us in Florida State like 2 years in a row there. They were beating everybody except us two. And but they're back. They're back almost beating everybody now. They lost a tough one last week.
Yeah.
But he's done a super job there, and we do. We like each other. Our wives really get along very well. So if your wives get along well, you're pretty much going to get along with the other guy also probably.
His name is Steve Spurrier, Coach. It's great to hear your voice again. Congratulations on the success of the book.
Yeah, I think people that maybe are sort of doing average or a little above average and want to try to, be the best at whatever they're doing, there's a lot of stuff in this book I think could help.
Really cool stuff. I enjoyed learning about your dad and his influence on you and your other journeys in football.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Good talking with you, David.